Not days ago, not last year, hours ago, the sky over the Middle East changed. Flashes, shockwaves, sirens, and once again, the region held its breath. Direct military strikes, not proxies, not shadow operations, not deniable actors, sovereign states, confronting each other openly. Washington and Tel Aviv call it prevention. Tehran calls it aggression. The language is different. The explosions are not. Within hours, retaliation followed. Ballistic trajectories across night skies. Air defense systems activated. Civilians rushing for shelter. In modern warfare, escalation moves faster than diplomacy. And before analysts finish their statements, before press briefings shape the narrative, before hashtags decide sides, ordinary people are already awake in fear. This is no longer a question of rhetoric. It is a test of deterrence, a test of international law, a test of whether regional tension can be contained, or whether it spills beyond borders. Tonight, we break it down. What happened, why it matters, and how a few hours may reshape the strategic balance of an entire region. The timeline matters. According to initial official statements from U.S. and Israeli authorities, coordinated strikes targeted what were described as military facilities, air defense nodes, and strategic infrastructure linked to Iran's security apparatus. The justification, preemptive defense. The objective, degrade capabilities considered an imminent threat. Precision-guided munitions were reportedly used. The emphasis, limited scope. No intention, they stated, of broad war. Tehran's official response came quickly. Iranian state media confirmed impacts in multiple areas and described the strikes as violations of sovereignty. Government representatives declared the attacks unlawful and warned that retaliation would follow under the framework of self-defense. Within hours, that retaliation began. Ballistic missiles were launched toward Israeli territory. Drone waves followed. Air defense systems activated across multiple layers. Israeli military briefings reported interceptions by Arrow and David Sling systems, stating that the majority of incoming threats were neutralized. However, authorities acknowledged that some impacts occurred, triggering civil defense protocols and temporary shutdowns in affected zones. Casualty numbers remain fluid, damage assessments ongoing, independent verification limited in the first hours. This is the fog of rapid escalation. Now step back. Strategically, this is not just an exchange of fire. It signals three critical shifts. First, direct attribution. No deniable intermediaries. No ambiguity about state involvement. Second, vertical escalation. Ballistic missile use marks a higher threshold than proxy skirmishes. Third, regional signaling. Other actors are watching closely. Energy markets react. Military readiness levels adjust. Diplomatic channels activate quietly. This moment sits at the intersection of deterrence theory and geopolitical risk. Because once ballistic trajectories cross borders, the margin for miscalculation narrows. Next, the legal framework and the debate over preemptive force under international law. Now pause the explosions. Enter the law. Under the United Nations Charter, the use of force between sovereign states is generally prohibited, with two exceptions: self-defense against an armed attack, or authorization by the UN Security Council. In this case, no Security Council mandate was issued. The justification presented was preemptive defense, striking first to prevent a future threat. But here lies the controversy. Preemption is not universally accepted. International legal scholars remain divided. Some argue that if a threat is imminent and unavoidable, preemption can be justified. Others insist that speculative future danger does not meet the threshold of lawful self-defense. The difference between imminent and possible is not semantic. It is legal, it is political, it is historical. Because once preemptive doctrine becomes normalized, the barrier to interstate force lowers. And that concerns many observers. Now shift from doctrine to people. Because regardless of legal framing, civilians feel impact first. Shockwaves do not stop at military fences. Windows shatter beyond strategic compounds. Sirens do not ask for political alignment. In parts of Iran, tremors from the strikes were reportedly felt beyond designated targets. In Israel, shelters filled within minutes of missile alerts. This is the paradox of modern precision warfare. Weapons are smarter. But geography is shared. Military targets are embedded within national territory. And national territory includes civilian life. International humanitarian law is clear on one principle: distinction. Combatants must distinguish between military objectives and civilian objects, and proportionality must guide force. But proportionality is one of the most debated concepts in wartime law. How much force is too much? How much collateral risk is acceptable? Who defines it? And after what damage? These questions do not wait for academic panels. They unfold in real time. Children wake up to sirens. Hospitals activate emergency protocols. Airspace closes. Flights divert. And this is the core tension of your narrative. States speak in the language of security. Civilians experience the language of fear. Now step away from missiles. Step away from maps. Return to people, because strategy is discussed in secure rooms. But consequences unfold in ordinary homes. Children do not understand deterrence theory. Families do not calculate proportionality. Civilians do not vote on escalation timelines. They react to sirens, to shockwaves, to uncertainty. International humanitarian law exists for this reason: to protect those not participating in hostilities, to reduce suffering, to preserve a minimum standard of humanity, even in conflict. But law is only as strong as the will to uphold it. And when force becomes the first response, legal debate follows damage, not prevention. Here is the uncomfortable reality. Every side claims security. Every side claims necessity. Every side claims justification. But security built on continuous retaliation becomes fragile. Deterrence can prevent war, but it can also normalize brinkmanship, and brinkmanship narrows the margin for error. One miscalculation, one failed interception, one misread signal. Escalation does not need intention, it needs momentum. So the real question is not who fired first, it is this: at what point does defense become cycle? At what point does prevention become precedent? At what point does strength begin to weaken stability? Diplomacy often looks weak beside explosions, but history shows something consistent. Wars rarely end at the moment of maximum force. They end when political calculation overtakes military impulse. If you are watching this, you are not here for slogans. You are here for understanding. This channel does not take sides. It examines structure. It analyzes consequence. It centers humanity. Because beyond strategy, beyond legality, beyond power, lives remain the constant. Disagreement is natural. Debate is welcome. Respect is required. Share your perspective thoughtfully. And remember, in every escalation, civilians pay first. TRX Update.